And in this English lesson, I want to talk about why your English vocabulary is, well, stuck. More specifically, I'm going to show you 3 reasons why that is happening to you, and then I will introduce a few points to help you begin the transformation of your English vocabulary so that you can feel more confident speaking anywhere, anytime. If you don't know me very well, hi, how's it hanging? I'm Teacher Prix, and I'm going to help you talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime in English. Consider subscribing to the channel because every week I post different kinds of English lessons to help you on your journey to English fluency. So I appreciate you being part of this community. Now, guys, that being said, let's dive into the content. To understand why your English vocabulary is not making progress, you're not moving forward, you need to understand the 2 levels of vocabulary. And as you can see here on the screen, you can see the surface and the deep, the iceberg. And that is basically that, the surface level and the deep level. So you have these 2 levels when it comes to your ability to communicate, your vocabulary. So what is the surface level? In a nutshell, these are the words that are readily available to you, okay? When someone asks you a question, those words come very quickly to you, okay? It is easy to find those words. These are words we unconsciously resort to in everyday conversation. We are comfortable using them. We are confident using them. So whenever we find ourselves in a pickle, these are the words that pop up in our heads. Conversely, the deep level of vocabulary is the broader range of words that someone recognizes, that someone understands. So you have some advanced expressions right here, some advanced words and idioms and slang. However, these are words that you don't fully understand, not completely. You may understand its meaning. However, using it is a completely different story. It is a horse of another color. You don't fully grasp the way to put that word in a sentence. You don't feel fully confident. Consequently, when it's go time and you're supposed to say something, to provide an answer, to share your opinion, to ask a question, to describe something, you go back to the surface level. Because your brain, guys, your brain is very clever. And when it comes to vocabulary usage, your brain will always search the words in the surface level because it's faster. It is more convenient. So your brain doesn't need to sweat about it. It doesn't need to become too focused. The surface level works just fine. If I ask you the question, how was your last weekend? Basic question. And I would immediately, even myself, I would immediately say, well, it was good. It was great. Not bad. Now, are these words acceptable? Absolutely. Native speakers use those words. I'm not against those words. However, if I go deep, if I give myself time, and if I change my techniques when it comes to vocabulary, and I will talk about this in part 2 of this video, then there would be more. Oh, how was your last weekend, Priscilla? Oh my goodness, I had a superb weekend. I had such a fulfilling conversation with my friend. It was an enjoyable moment. Of course, here I'm exaggerating and using the 3 words, but just to point out that it is an effort. I need this repetition. It's something I'm not going to cover in this video. I'm going to cover in part 2. There is a number on average of the repetition required so that that word goes to your unconscious mind and becomes part of the surface level. Yes, because we can take these complex words and move them up to the surface level. But you need to give your brain the right stimulation. And how do you do that? By changing the way you connect with the language, by changing the way you study. And of course, understanding your default system. That is basically reason number 1. Your default way to say things, to express yourself, is still in the basic zone. Here on my channel, I help students at an intermediate level. That's my goal. I use a more simplistic language so that I can help as many students as possible to understand my message and keep going and improving. But inside my academy, that's where I give more advanced stuff to my students, advanced vocabulary and expressions, so that they can brush up on their communication skills and get the results they're looking for. And this is something that you ought to change your default way to think of the words you want to use. This is on autopilot, guys, and there is a process required to make the proper transformation. Because this is what is happening to your brain. Your brain is set to use the surface level. And if you don't change that, if you don't change your approach to the way you study vocabulary, you're always going to resort to the most simplistic way to express yourself. On a side note, is that wrong? No, that is not wrong. Is that something, oh, Priscilla, so you're saying that my English is terrible because I always resort to more basic language? No. My point here is completely different. My point is, you want to advance? So that is something we need to think about. But in real life, as I always tell my students, when it's go time, it is go time. That's why we always resort to the surface level. And in the practice time, we change the way we study so that we can improve that range of vocabulary we feel comfortable with. That's what I'm talking about. So I'm not judging you for using more basic vocabulary. Guys, when it's the real world, it is survival. Do what you gotta do. That's my mindset. That's what I do when I am talking to people, when I'm talking to native speakers. But when I am practicing, completely different game. I always do my very best to advance my knowledge and my use of words. That being said, the second reason here, your language inputs are poor. Do not expect to master vocabulary, to expand your range of words if the way you study is poor. As William Stone used to say, you are a product of your environment. If there is one thing I want you to remember from this lesson is this: your speech reflects the quality of the contact you interact with the most. So what are you interacting with the most? Food for thought, huh? Look around. Social media, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, what else? Twitter, or X now. Sentences are getting shorter. Attention spans are shrinking. Social media is bombarding their viewers with poor quality content, filled with simple language, vulgarities, slang, really short sentences, very short content, because we can't pay attention anymore. That's our environment. Oh, but Priscilla, when I study, I try to study more advanced content. Yeah, but that is 1 hour of your day, maybe 2 hours of your day. What do you do with everything else? What kind of content do you feed your mind? This is the challenge we face in modern society. Again, I'm not judging, because I myself have to be mindful of the content I watch, of the content I read, so that I don't fall into the same trap that so many people fall into. So your language inputs, if you constantly see people, there's a word I love using, and I noticed that my students who joined the academy start using it as well. Awesome. Awesome is awesome. It is an informal word. And I noticed that whenever I see my students having speaking exercises that we have inside the academy, they begin to use awesome, awesome. Why? The environment. And I am becoming more mindful of my word choices because I influence people watching me. So this is something you need to pay attention to. What am I watching? Who am I watching? What am I reading? Oh, Priscilla, but that is too complicated. That text is too complex. It's too much for me. It goes beyond my knowledge. Okay, one step at a time. That is how. One step at a time. To be able to read more complex subjects, you need to start somewhere. So social media is a very dangerous environment because it offers wonderful things. There are many beautiful lessons, really superb content out there. But finding these gems is the challenge because there's so much information. So this is something you need to be careful about because your environment could be shaping your vocabulary. That's the point I'm going to make. That is the reason here that I'm emphasizing. Now, before I move on to reason number 3, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and if possible, I hope you can share this video with a friend, okay? I know there are many people out there that would benefit from watching this video. Now, you want to speak or to answer very quickly. This is this is psychological. Whenever you find yourself in a situation where you're supposed to use your English, have a conversation, answer the phone, participate in a meeting, answer questions during a job interview, you put so much pressure on your brain, and your first command is quickly, say something, show you understand, go. And this is so negative. Okay, this is not going to help you in the long run. And I know this, I understand that when you're under pressure, the psychological aspect here is you want to prove you can do it. You want to prove you can explain. You want to prove psychologically, okay, guys, this is not even something rational, conscious. You're not even aware of that. But your attempt, in an attempt to show your fluency, to show that, yeah, I got this, you answer questions too hastily, too quickly. You rush because you want to express your ideas. You want to put your ideas across, and you don't take the time to analyze what exactly you would like to express. And this is practice. This is practice. You have to become mindful of what ideas you want to express. Becoming comfortable with a few seconds. I'm not trying to imply that when someone asks you a question, you will be quiet, staring into the person's eyes for 1 minute, 2, 3. No, come on. As I said before, when it's showtime, it is survival. Do what you gotta do. But you need to nourish slowly, one step at a time, one step at a time. That sometimes when someone asks you a question, to show wisdom, take the time to process the question. 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Oh, but Priscilla, that's such a short period of time. Your brain is very fast. When I say be comfortable with the silence so that you can process the question, so that you can process information, I am talking about seconds. I'm not talking about minutes here. Because in real life, when, let's say you're at a job interview, someone asks you a question, you will have like 5, 6 seconds before it begins to feel strange, uncomfortable. Because most people nowadays are uncomfortable with the silence. They don't want to wait a second. They want the answers right away. But this hinders your ability to communicate because you will always stay in that surface level that I mentioned before. So mindful silence. You're not just looking at the person thinking of nothing. You're processing the information. You need to teach your brain how to do that. That's why in your practice, you need to have the right kind of exercise to teach your brain, to condition your brain to do that more easily. If you look at me, I am making some pauses here. I am intentionally choosing some words. That is practice. To get better at this, you will need to start somewhere. And if your vocabulary is stuck, I strongly recommend following the recommendations that I'm going to start sharing in this video. And if you want part 2, when I finish this lesson in the comment area, post part 2, and I will come back with more, okay? Because there's more to be done. Because when it comes to, okay, how do I change that? I wish I could have a magic pill to give you that would instantly change the way you deal with vocabulary. But I'm afraid that is not the case. That only happens in books and movies. In real life, it's completely different. There's work to be done. But there are 3 main recommendations that I will mention today, and I will get into more details in part 2, where I'm going to share more additional insights to help you understand that, okay, your vocabulary is stuck, but there is something you can do. There's work to be done. And they revolve around these 3 tips, but there is more that I want to cover in part 2. The materials you read have to change. Classic novels, poems, And I will explain in part 2 why they're so beneficial and what kind of strategy you should follow when reading those materials, okay? Becoming mindful of your word preferences, and you do this in your practice time. There are exercises you can do so that you can master your ability of choosing words wisely. That's what I want to talk about in part 2 of this video. And 3, again, there's more to be talked about. There's more to be explained. Don't rush into answering questions or sharing your views right away. You have to prepare the soil. Preparing the soil. When you face yourself in a conversation, phone call, job interview, presentation, there are strategies you can implement so that you can prepare the soil and give a proper answer, an answer that you feel more excited about, that you feel like it represents you better than rushing into saying something without preparing the soil. But these are things you practice. You will not immediately change. I want to make that very clear. You raise your awareness, you understand what is going on that is making your vocabulary stuck. In part 2, I'm going to dive into these 3 tips, into more details and a few more to help you understand that it requires action. Changing requires action, but you are on the right track. By simply by watching this video, I imagine that something already started to change. That is all for today, guys. Make sure to share this video with a friend, but other than that, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!